What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Shadow Pokemon, all of the updates that have happened with these Pokemon, and then finally just talking about the impact that it has, and of course the best Pokemon that are going to benefit from this. I'll be giving my opinion along the way, but because we have so much information to cover, I'm actually just going to jump straight into it. But if you do enjoy this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So up first, we have the official announcement from Pokémon Go stating that there is going to be a change to Shadow Pokemon. And the main point going to be that these Pokemon have now officially become stronger. So what exactly does that mean? We will definitely be talking about that, but we've got quite a bit to cover. The next aspect that I wanted to talk about that is very important, and I wanted to put it more towards the beginning of the video because of how important it is. That is an event coming out in Pokémon Go, and it's going to be on March 7th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. where you will be able to TM the move Frustration over to another move, or just like the regular move set. Now, the reason why this is so important is because in the past with Shadow Pokemon, the only way for you to get a good move set was to unlock a secondary charge move. But man, was that expensive. And when you kind of think about it, in the past with Shadow Pokemon, what benefit did they have? They were extremely expensive to power up, unlock secondary charge moves, all of that stuff, and then they really had no added benefit to it. I think some people got them and then potentially used the purification to get a Pokemon up to level 25. Maybe that was somewhat beneficial for legendary Pokemon, but at the same time, I honestly was just scratching my head with all of these Shadow Pokemon saying, what is kind of the point in them? Well, officially, we actually now have a reason why you would want to use a Shadow Pokemon over a regular Pokemon. And that's going to actually stem down to the fact that they will now be able to deal 20% more damage than regular Pokemon, and in return they will take 17% more damage, and that's going to be like a lowering of just the defense, but nothing's actually changing on the CP or anything like that. It just has to do with the bonus multipliers that they get. So for example, the damage bonus multiplier is going to be a 1.20, and it's going to stack on top of weather. So you can just look at these Shadow Pokemon like they're always Shadow Pokemon. They always get that added benefit to the attack, the decrease to the defense, and then weather or whatever else stab benefit, all that stuff just stacks on top of it, potentially making these Pokemon very overpowered. But honestly, I think it makes sense. I'll talk about that a little bit more as far as like the cost and everything like that. But if you know anything about these Shadow Pokemon, why they're in the game, what they came from in the past, Shadow Pokemon are supposed to be stronger, and that just hasn't happened in Pokemon Go. So like I said, I scratched my head and was like, what the heck is the point? Now we officially have an update to this, so a lot has kind of changed with how Shadow Pokemon are going to be looked at. So up next, I wanted to go ahead and kind of showcase some of the changes related to the cost of Shadow Pokemon. When you're talking about things like the power-up cost, the power-up cost has been reduced. It's nothing ridiculous anymore where it was like ×3 the normal Stardust count. It's not like that anymore. And then finally, if you do choose to unlock a secondary charge move, we're basically seeing like a 20% increase to the regular Pokemon, where for example it would cost just 10,000 Stardust, 25 candy. Well, now we've got a 20% boost to that, so now it's going to cost 12,000 Stardust and then 30 candy in that case. And that actually stands true among all of the Pokemon. I'll go ahead and just kind of briefly show this. This would typically be 50,000, for example. It's now up to 60. And then when we move on to the next Pokemon, it would normally be 75. Now it is 90, and it will cost 90 candy. And then finally with the legendary Pokemon, it's going to cost 120,000 and then 120 candy. But if you think about it, I mean, you don't necessarily have to unlock a secondary charge move if you TM during that event. That's why it's so important. So for something like a Raikou, if you had a really good one, you can go ahead and do it, and then eventually just TM until you get Wild Charge, and you're good to go with this Pokemon, and you'll get all the benefits of that extra attack. So that's something to definitely kind of point out. So now let's talk a little bit more about kind of why this is happening and what the difference is going to be between these Pokemon. As far as the stats are concerned, nothing is changing with the Pokemon. The only difference that's kind of happening is the fact that Tyranitar is a Shadow Pokemon. It's going to have that benefit of getting the Shadow bonus on all moves, not even just stab moves, just all moves will get a Shadow bonus for the simple fact that it is a Shadow Pokemon. Now, the downside to Shadow Pokemon, at least in my mind, is the cost related to them. They've got an extra 20% cost to it, but you also get a bump in performance. So yes, it will cost more, but you also get a bump in the performance. So in my opinion, I honestly think that it makes sense. And as far as it being like too overpowered, when you're talking about people having like Shadow Tyranitar, for example, what are the odds of someone having like a Smackdown Tyranitar that was already a Shadow Pokemon, like they evolved it during the December Community Day, for example, went ahead and got it up to it, got it on there, and then they decided to power it up. Now, I mean, there's a lot of ifs in this particular situation to get the absolute most benefit out of these Pokemon. So, in my opinion, I think it makes sense. Do I like that they're like extremely overpowered? I mean, absolutely not, because it makes all of your other Pokemon less relevant in comparison to Shadow Pokemon, but I do like it from the fact that you're now going to be able to do better solos and potentially solo like legendary Pokemon. That's how overpowered these are. So we've got like a screenshot that we'll take a look at, and then we'll talk about those absolute Pokemon. So Rampardos, an absolute beast. It's still holding on to that #1 spot, which we'll definitely talk about. But if you go ahead and check out the comparison between like Shadow Tyranitar and then of course Shadow Weavile, and then you run them up against their counterparts, of course having the exact same moves, you're seeing that they are jumping ahead of the pile because of that ability of getting out so much more damage. This is such a huge deal in Pokemon Go. So now that we've talked about anything and everything related to these Shadow Pokemon, you know what? Let's go ahead and jump into the list. So apparently I wasn't the only one kind of curious about just how overpowered Shadow Pokemon are going to be, because Game Press wrote an article about it, and we're going to take a look at it on a per type basis. Spoiler alert, Shadow Pokemon are now dominating this, but they decided to go ahead and write this article not just about Pokemon currently in the game, but also future Pokemon that are potentially going to be like the #1 options, just to show how overpowered these Shadow Pokemon are. So let's go ahead and start off with the Dragon types. We've got the Shadow Salamence and a Shadow Dragonite, both of them actually outperforming a Rayquaza. That's absolutely insane, but don't worry, it gets even crazier. Let's go ahead and move down to the Dark. Now, this is something that I actually like to see. So we have a Shadow Weavile, Shadow Houndoom, and Shadow Tyranitar. Well, Weavile and Tyranitar have already been very good from just the Dark typing, but a Pokemon that we haven't really seen is Houndoom. So I like that Houndoom has gotten an upgrade because of this whole Shadow situation. So Houndoom, in my mind, is one that I am definitely going to be looking for if I possibly can. Something to definitely just kind of keep in the back of your mind. Now we've got the Rock typing. Rampardos managed to hold on to the #1 spot, so that's like one of the few Pokemon that is not currently a Shadow Pokemon that held on to the #1 spot, so good for Rampardos. But we've got the Shadow Tyranitar, and then it's actually now up above Rhyperior with Rock Wrecker because of this Shadow kind of benefit, so that is just insane. Up next, we've got the Ice typing. So we already kind of mentioned Weavile. Weavile is so overpowered now because of this entire thing. It was up on the top of the list for Dark, up on the top of the list for the Ice type as well. And then we actually have a Shadow Porygon Z, which is kind of interesting. Also tied with Articuno. Very interesting because it's not even an Ice type Pokemon, but because it has an Ice type attack and it's got the Shadow benefit, it now finds itself in the top 5, which is just absolutely crazy. Now, wow, this is insane. We've got from the Ghost type Shadow Banette taking over the #1 spot. Over Gengar, over Chandelure, over Giratina, all of those on that DPS. Oh man, Shadow Banette, all of a sudden a viable option, so very crazy to kind of take a look at. Up next, we've got Shadow Moltres, and then we've got Shadow Magmortars. So for Shadow Moltres, I mean, geez, that is just insane. You're not going to be able to have like the Sky Attack in that case, so it does kind of showcase here. Oh my gosh. All right, so let's go to move on to the Electric. For the Electric, we've got a lot of Shadow Pokemon in this category in particular. Electivire doing great, Raikou doing great. That is just insane, showcasing how much of an effect it has on the Electric typing. Up next, we've got Grass, where we've got the Shadow Victory Bell kind of taking over that #1 spot. And then even a Shadow Venusaur with Solar Beam could do a lot of damage. Of course, you would like to use Frenzy Plant as well, so just kind of keep that in mind. For this Steel typing, Metagross manages to hold off on itself, where we are talking about like Meteor Mash, for example. With Shadow Metagross, you weren't able to get Meteor Mash in time on your Shadow Metagross before the Community Day. Just bad timing. So unfortunately for now, it can only have Flash Cannon. Maybe hold on to one. If you have it for the next kind of group community day, it will definitely take over it. Up next for the bug. Wow, we've got a lot of domination from those Shadow Pokemon with Pinsir, Scizor, and then even Scyther in that case. That is just crazy with a pre-evolution doing that. And then for water, of course, this is talking about kind of DPS. Shadow Gyarados all of a sudden getting thrusted up near the top. That is insane. Shadow Swampert as well. We just had the issue once again of it not being able to get the community day on the Swampert. You would have to hold it to be able to get Hydro Cannon in that case. With Mewtwo, we're going to see, for Psychic, we're going to see Mewtwo kind of holding on to that. But Shadow Alakazam moving up. If it could get Psychic, it's going to be even further up. And it would actually surpass Mewtwo. That is just insane. Fairy typing, we've got the Shadow Gardevoir kind of taking over that #1 spot. Already has it, but it's beating itself if you want to look at it that way. For the ground type, for now, we are Shadow free. So that's the only one that kind of was completely unaffected. For the poison typing, Shadow Victory Bell doing great, Shadow Vileplume doing great as well. Even a Shadow Muck, that's kind of interesting. And then finally, when we move over to the normal typing, we've got Shadow Porygon Z, definitely kind of leading the pack in that way. So this is just crazy. This has just such a massive effect. I would love to know what you think about this in the comments section below. What are your thoughts on Shadow Pokemon? What are your plans for obtaining these Shadow Pokemon? Are you going to be TMing them over in the event? Anything and everything, let me know in the comments section below, and I will see you next time.